The coordinator's voice stopped halfway through the announcement when the music suddenly paused. It was not planned. The background celebration song did not fade gradually. It cut, like someone had pressed a procedural silence command inside the sound system. People continued clapping for a moment, unsure whether the pause was intentional. The room felt slightly confused, but nobody spoke immediately. The coordinator adjusted the microphone cable once before speaking again in a neutral, administrative tone. She said, "My sister wanted to share a prepared message before the gift distribution ceremony." Prepared, not spontaneous. That word stayed inside my observation memory longer than the sentence itself. I was standing near the dessert table, slightly behind the decorative flower arrangement, holding a glass of sparkling apple juice that I had not finished drinking since the celebration started. The handbag was placed on the chair beside me. Its position was slightly tilted toward my body. Inside the main compartment, the recording device was already activated. Not loudly, not visibly. The activation happened when the microphone system was turned on. I had learned that behavioral security works better when the subject believes observation has not begun. My sister walked toward the stage without rushing. Her steps were controlled, measured, as if she had rehearsed walking speed relative to speech delivery timing. She wore a lavender dress that matched the baby shower decoration theme. The color choice was not accidental. Lavender was the social signal of emotional safety inside family gatherings. Her hair was tied carefully, exposing the side of her neck where she usually kept one small silver pendant. She did not wear it today. I noticed that absence. Behavioral absence sometimes carries more information than presence. The coordinator handed her the microphone. The moment she touched it, she waited exactly 2 seconds before speaking. Not 1, not 3, 2. Speech timing control is often used by people who want the audience to subconsciously prepare attention before receiving information. She began talking about family love. The phrase was delivered in a calm, academic tone rather than emotional warmth. She spoke about motherhood transition, about patience inside life transformation, about how women sometimes forget to ask help when responsibilities become heavy. The sentence construction was interesting. She did not say pregnant women, she said women inside transition phase. That linguistic substitution is usually used when the speaker wants the message to feel universal rather than personal. The guests nodded politely. Someone near the cake table whispered that the speech sounded beautiful. I observed their reaction without joining the emotional consensus. Social approval often forms when narrative authority is accepted by group behavior. My husband was standing near the chocolate dessert section. He was scrolling through his phone. He checked the screen once without unlocking it, then returned the device to the same position in his hand. 10 seconds later, he repeated the action. The rhythm was consistent. 3 observation cycles inside 2 minutes. He did not appear anxious, but his posture angle changed slightly when my sister mentioned the word guidance. I stored that behavioral microchange. My sister continued speaking about emotional distance inside families. She said love sometimes requires people to make decisions for someone else's future when that person may be overwhelmed by personal interpretation. The sentence structure was intentionally protective, not aggressive, but socially dominant in moral framing. Guidance was the central theme, not help, not suggestion. Guidance carries administrative authority inside interpersonal communication. She said, strong families do not allow unnecessary emotional complexity to disturb safety planning. The guests applauded softly. The applause was socially polite rather than emotionally excited. That difference is important. Social applause without emotional resonance usually indicates cognitive uncertainty inside audience perception. My sister paused once when she noticed my facial expression. I was not smiling. I was listening. Observation is often mistaken for emotional distance. She said, sometimes independence can create resistance toward people who are trying to protect you. The phrasing was subtle. Independence perception framing, not direct accusation, but the semantic direction was clear. She continued describing how families must sometimes make difficult choices when they believe someone is not thinking clearly about long-term security. The speech contained 3 behavioral framing categories: independence perception, guidance authority, decision safety framing. My sister was very good at social language engineering. My husband walked slowly toward me during the speech. He placed his hand lightly on my back and said everything was fine. He repeated that sentence once more after 3 seconds. I nodded. I did not argue, because argument rarely produces behavioral information. Silence does. I remembered recording activation timing. The device inside my handbag was connected silently when the microphone system was switched on at the beginning of the speech. I had saved the file under Observation Record, Social Behavior Pattern. There were already 12 files inside that folder. 8 were audio pattern records, 4 were behavioral timeline notes. I did not expect dramatic revelation during the baby shower. Preparation is not performed for theater. Preparation is performed for verification. The coordinator announced that gift presentation would begin soon. People started moving toward the table where baby clothes were placed inside transparent wrapping boxes. My sister looked at me once from across the room. She was smiling, not emotionally intense, not hostile, just confident, like someone who believed the narrative environment had already been structured in her favor. My husband said the speech was beautiful. I answered quietly that it was well delivered. He asked if I was feeling tired. I said I was comfortable. He did not ask further. The music started playing softly again. Not the same song as before. Someone changed it. The melody was slower, almost neutral. I thought about the final sentence of my sister's speech. Love sometimes means making difficult choices for someone else's future. The statement did not specify whose future was being protected. The coordinator called my name to come forward for appreciation moment. I stood up slowly. The applause returned. But behind the celebration sound, I analyzed the structural composition of the speech: guidance, protection, decision authority, future safety, independence perception correction. The speech was not emotional communication. It was behavioral positioning. The recording file was saved, but the meaning of the speech was still under observation classification. The celebration music volume was slightly lower when I returned to my seat near the dessert table, not because someone intentionally adjusted it for me, but because social gatherings often produce natural sound redistribution when people begin moving toward conversation clusters. My husband stood beside me while pretending to watch the baby shower decoration lights near the ceiling. He did not speak immediately. He usually waited before starting conversations when other people were within listening distance. That behavior pattern had appeared 17 times in the last 5 months. I counted silently. Not because I was trying to judge him emotionally. Pattern observation is more reliable than interpretation. He asked if I wanted water. I said I was fine. He repeated the question using slightly different wording after 7 seconds. Sometimes repetition, framed as concern, is actually an attempt to confirm conversational control. I took another sip of the apple juice. The glass was nearly half empty. I had chosen apple juice instead of cold water because transparent liquids inside social events allow more behavioral observation time without attracting attention. My sister was talking with 2 guests near the gift table. Her laughter was controlled, not loud, not theatrical. Controlled social laughter usually indicates confidence in narrative dominance. She looked comfortable inside the environment she had helped design. The lavender decoration, the soft lighting, the carefully chosen music, and the speech structure together created a protective emotional frame. My husband said my sister was very thoughtful. I asked why he thought so. He said the speech showed maturity. Maturity is a socially safe word. It is often used when someone wants to express approval without analyzing message intent. I noticed he did not comment on specific parts of the speech. He did not mention guidance framing. He did not mention future safety statements. General praise without structural analysis is common when someone wants to avoid behavioral discussion. He checked his phone once, without unlocking the screen, then placed it face down inside his jacket pocket. That movement was important. People usually keep devices visible if they are expecting communication. Face-down placement suggests temporary communication suppression or calculation. I did not ask him about the phone.
Questions sometimes produce defensive behavior signals that may distort pattern observation. The coordinator announced that guests could write messages for the baby inside a memory book placed near the cake table. Several people moved toward the table. My sister approached me while holding a small envelope. She said it contained a personal note for me, not for the baby, for me. Her tone was soft, almost protective. She told me that family sometimes needs private communication outside public celebration energy. She handed the envelope slowly. The paper quality was slightly heavier than standard greeting card material, approximately 24-pound archival paper. That type of paper is usually used when someone wants the message to be preserved longer. I did not open the envelope immediately. She said I could read it later if I wanted. That sentence is psychologically interesting. Offering delayed reading permission often reduces immediate curiosity pressure. It also provides the recipient with social freedom illusion. I placed the envelope inside my handbag, next to the recording device compartment. My husband said the baby shower arrangement looked expensive. He mentioned the cost of decoration once, not directly, but by estimating flower quantity and lighting quality. He said events like this usually require careful financial planning. I answered that organization was handled by my sister. He nodded slowly. His eyes moved toward the dessert table again. He picked a small chocolate pastry but did not eat it immediately. He held it in his hand while talking to another guest about work schedules. The pastry remained intact for almost 3 minutes. People who are thinking about conversation strategy sometimes delay eating behavior because eating requires short social withdrawal. My sister returned to the stage area after receiving a signal from the coordinator. She thanked everyone for attending. Then she said she hoped the baby would grow inside a family that understands difficult love decisions. The phrase was repeated, not exactly, but conceptually. Difficult love decisions. I remembered analyzing that semantic cluster earlier. The recording file inside my handbag was silently running. The microphone activation indicator was invisible, but I knew the system was operational. I had placed the device inside the inner pocket when the music changed earlier. My husband asked if I was feeling emotional. I said I was observing. He smiled slightly. Observation is often misinterpreted as detachment, but observation is preparation. My sister spoke about family protection again. She said sometimes people who are loved may resist protection because they believe independence must be preserved even when decision clarity is uncertain. The statement carried behavioral correction framing, not accusation, correction. Correction language is socially safer but psychologically stronger than accusation language. Guests clapped politely, not enthusiastically. Polite applause usually indicates cognitive processing rather than emotional agreement. My husband touched my shoulder lightly and said everything would be fine. He repeated the phrase once, everything will be fine. Future tense reassurance is often used when someone wants emotional stabilization without discussing procedural details. I asked him if he was worried about something. He said no. He said he was just enjoying the celebration. His voice tone was slightly slower than normal. Speech speed reduction can indicate internal calculation process. My sister finished her message by saying family should sometimes make choices for people they care about, even if those people cannot see the long-term safety structure immediately. The coordinator announced that the final photo session would begin. Guests started moving toward the decorated background wall. My sister walked past me and whispered that I should listen to the recording later when I was alone. Her breath was close, but voice was controlled. Not threatening, not emotional, controlled. I asked what was inside the note. She said it was something she wanted me to understand privately. Then she smiled, the kind of smile people use when they believe moral authority has already been established. My husband said we should stand together for the photo. I agreed. The photographer counted slowly before taking the picture. 1, 2, 3. The flash was bright. During that moment, I felt the handbag vibration indicator activate softly. The recording file had finished the first session capture cycle. I did not open the message envelope yet, because information sometimes reveals more truth when timing is chosen carefully. The baby shower music changed again, slower, calmer, almost reflective. My sister was standing near the exit corridor, watching me without speaking. I noticed she was not holding her phone, which means communication was probably completed earlier. Pattern observation continued.
The house was quieter after the celebration lights were turned off.
The air conditioning system cycled softly near the corner of the living room, creating a slow, rhythmic sound that repeated every few minutes. I noticed that the cycle interval was slightly irregular tonight, as if the mechanical system was compensating for a temperature pattern that did not exist. I placed my handbag on the wooden coffee table without opening it. The recording device inside had completed its capture sequence. The small indicator light had stopped blinking, meaning the speech recording session was finalized. Waiting produces more behavioral information than speaking. I learned that long ago. Across the hallway, I heard the faint movement of my husband inside the kitchen. A cabinet door opened once, then closed. The duration between the opening and closing motion was approximately 2 seconds longer than his usual object handling rhythm. Small behavioral deviations are rarely accidental when they appear inside repetitive personal environments. He was not speaking. Silence carries different cognitive meanings depending on how it is structured. Tonight, his silence felt slightly longer than his baseline resting behavior window. I did not check the time. Time itself was not the variable I was studying. Behavior was. I opened my laptop slowly. The baby shower speech recording file was stored inside a dual protection directory: primary encrypted storage channel, secondary archive safety channel. The dual storage structure was not created out of fear. It was created because information systems are more reliable when redundancy protection exists. The file size displayed on the screen was 84.6 megabytes, not large enough to be overwhelming, not small enough to be irrelevant, exactly within the bandwidth window required for 27 minutes and 12 seconds of spoken content. I did not press playback immediately. Instead, I observed the screen reflection slightly on the dark wooden table surface. Environment reflection patterns sometimes reveal unconscious emotional positioning inside decision environments. The speech recording interface remained open, waiting. I placed my fingers gently on the playback control icon. Then I paused, because observation must come before interpretation. I pressed play. My sister's voice began with polite gratitude. The opening section of the speech used emotional modulation techniques designed to create social harmony perception. She thanked family members for attending, spoke about motherhood as a sacred responsibility, and used language that framed endurance as a social virtue. At the 7th minute and 32-second mark, the linguistic structure shifted. The speech became less personal, more philosophical, more socially administrative in tone. She spoke about guidance, about decisions made by people who care more than others can understand. The subject of the speech was never directly named, but the behavioral target was statistically implied: independence perception framing, moral guidance authority positioning, emotional responsibility redistribution. The pattern was subtle, professional, socially acceptable on surface presentation, but psychologically directional. I observed my husband again through peripheral awareness. He had checked his phone once during the speech without unlocking the screen. The device was placed face down immediately afterward. The placement duration was approximately 4 seconds shorter than his usual resting object behavior cycle. Behavioral mathematics is rarely about exact numbers. It is about deviation consistency. Across the hallway, I heard him speaking quietly on the driveway phone call. The door was slightly open. Summer night air moved slowly inside the house. I did not attempt to listen to the words. Conversation content is less reliable than movement structure. When he returned inside, he placed his phone inside his jacket pocket without checking the display screen first. That gesture was slightly unusual, not dramatic, not alarming, but statistically noticeable. I marked the observation silently. He walked past the living room without speaking to me. Silence tonight had calculation inside it. I stood up and walked toward the window. Baby shower decorations were still visible near the hallway corner. Celebrations are often treated as emotional events, but I had learned that social celebration environments are also behavioral information zones. I touched the curtain fabric once. The texture was soft, neutral, predictable. My sister's speech recording was still open in the playback interface buffer. 3 classification signals were still unresolved: intent certainty level, behavioral target orientation, post-speech interaction expectation curve. The investigation was not complete, and I did not need to announce that I was collecting information. People reveal more when they believe they are not being observed. I turned off the living room light, but left my laptop screen open on the table. The recording file remained visible, not closed, not deleted, just waiting. Because preparation is not confrontation. Preparation is understanding when the system begins to speak in behavioral patterns, and tonight the pattern was still speaking.
The call came exactly 3 days after I sent the formal review request to the legal advisory office. The notification light on my phone blinked once while I was sitting near the kitchen table, observing the morning sunlight moving slowly across the glass surface. I did not answer the call immediately. Waiting for 3 seconds before answering a professional communication often reveals whether the conversation is administrative or emotional in structure. I placed the phone gently on the table and watched the screen continue to display the incoming connection signal. Then I picked it up. "Yes," I said. The voice on the other side belonged to the compliance review investigator assigned to the recording file. Her tone was not emotional. Professional voices inside institutional systems are rarely emotionally expressive when discussing active case material. "We have completed preliminary classification verification," she said. The sentence was carefully structured, not a confirmation, not a rejection, a procedural declaration of progress. I remained silent. Silence allows administrative conversation partners to continue information disclosure without defensive interruption. "There are elements inside the recording that require secondary review," she continued, specifically the semantic framing sequence between the 7th and 12th minute segment. I already knew that. The sister's speech had contained structured guidance language inside that temporal window. "Are you able to attend a review session at the county administrative office tomorrow afternoon?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. The investigator paused slightly before speaking again. The pause duration was approximately 1 second longer than standard professional conversation rhythm. That was not accidental. "When you arrive," she said, "please bring the original storage device containing the recording file." "Understood." The call ended. I placed the phone face down on the table. Across the hallway, my husband was standing near the window. He had not spoken since the compliance review notification arrived earlier that morning. His posture was calm, but his hand was inside his jacket pocket again. He removed it slowly after approximately 8 seconds. People who are evaluating procedural risk tend to reduce unnecessary hand movement frequency. He said nothing. I did not ask any question. Authority confrontation does not require verbal escalation inside observation narratives. Later that afternoon, we went together to the administrative office building located near the Municipal Compliance Division Center. The building had neutral gray external walls. Institutional architecture often avoids decorative visual signals because authority systems function better when emotional stimulation is minimized. Inside the waiting room, there were 4 chairs arranged in linear alignment. I sat in the second chair from the left. My husband sat 1 seat away from me, not directly beside me. That spatial choice was not discussed, but behavioral positioning inside shared waiting environments can reveal relational tension calibration. After approximately 11 minutes, the investigator called my name. We entered the review chamber. The clerk assigned to the recording verification process was already inside the room. Security personnel were standing near the corridor entrance, but did not enter the chamber. Their presence was observational rather than operational. The investigator placed my storage device on the table. She connected it to the system terminal. The speech recording file opened on the screen. She played a short segment, then paused the playback. The room became very quiet, not because someone asked for silence, but because institutional review environments naturally reduce conversational behavior during active evidence processing. The investigator spoke first. "Your sister's speech contains social framing language that may be classified as intentional psychological positioning." The sentence was carefully chosen. Not accusation, not emotional interpretation. Classification language was used. I remained silent. My husband shifted slightly in his chair. Not dramatically, but I noticed the movement. The clerk beside the terminal monitor quietly picked up the internal communication handset and spoke 1 short sentence. "Please inform security that the review is transitioning into protected assessment phase." The voice was calm, professional, administrative. My husband did not speak. The speech recording continued playing inside the system. At the 12-minute and 40-second mark,
The investigator stopped the playback. She looked at me, then spoke in a very controlled tone. This case requires behavioral intent evaluation under social harm compliance guidelines. The words were not dramatic, but they carried procedural gravity. I noticed my husband's breathing pattern slow slightly. Silence inside administrative chambers is often more dangerous than argument because silence allows institutional conclusions to form without interruption. The clerk did not return the storage device to the normal exit distribution tray. He placed it inside a protective review envelope. The envelope was marked with a small administrative tag, Review. The investigator spoke again. Classification status is currently unresolved. Then she added one more sentence. The observation window remains open. I nodded once. No emotional statement was required. Preparation does not announce itself as confrontation. It simply continues to exist quietly inside structured information environments.
The investigator placed the recording device on the review table without speaking for several seconds. The room was quiet, in the way administrative spaces become when something important is being evaluated. I noticed the clerk's hands move only once, adjusting the position of the playback terminal before initiating the verification sequence. No one asked me to speak. I had learned that silence usually provided more information than explanation. The speech recording was opened inside the protected review interface. The waveform timeline appeared on the monitor, stretching across 18 minutes and 42 seconds of stored audio. The investigator confirmed the file authentication signature marked under my private archive folder dated 11 months earlier. My sister's voice began playing softly through the institutional speaker system. It was the same speech she had delivered during the baby shower gathering. At first, the words sounded normal: supportive language, family warmth framing, motherhood references, patience narrative. The investigator did not interrupt playback. He was holding a printed transcription copy consisting of 27 annotated segments highlighted with observation markers. I watched the second waveform peak where the tone of the speech shifted slightly. The line was subtle enough that people usually ignored it during public listening, but the annotation beside it read, Social Authority Repositioning Statement. My sister had said I was someone who needed guidance rather than independent decision recognition. The investigator placed a small blue marker beside that segment on the transcript sheet. Contextual dominance framing can function as psychological pressure, he said quietly. The husband was sitting 3 seats away from me. He had checked his phone once when the review began, but had not unlocked the screen. Now he placed the phone face down on the chair beside him. I noticed the duration of silence he maintained after each investigator question. It was longer than conversational comfort threshold, not dramatic silence. Calculation silence. The review system continued playing the recording. Another segment showed where my sister spoke about sacrifice, patience, and emotional endurance. The investigator compared the speech structure with behavioral pattern classification notes prepared earlier. Repeated moral framing directed toward a single individual may indicate intentional social positioning, he said quietly. No one argued. The file metadata window displayed the original storage activation time. The recording had been locked into encrypted personal archive mode immediately after the speech ended at the baby shower. I remembered placing the device inside the secondary compartment of my handbag before leaving the celebration hall. No one had noticed. The clerk opened a compliance reference document describing social psychological harm evaluation procedure. He did not speak loudly. Intent is evaluated through behavioral sequence probability, he said. Then he added one line that made the atmosphere quieter. The pattern is not complete yet. My sister was not present inside the review chamber, but her speech was being classified under behavioral influence documentation for further institutional analysis. The husband shifted his posture slightly, not aggressively, just enough to indicate that his earlier relaxed confidence had softened. The investigator closed the transcription copy and placed it inside a neutral gray file envelope marked Review Pending. He did not return it to the public tray. The file was routed to protective observation storage. I understood what that meant. Administrative systems continue processing even when people stop speaking. Evidence confirms structured social framing within the speech content, the investigator said finally. Not physical harm, but psychological pressure pattern consistent with intentional reputation positioning.
The legal classification document was signed quietly. Family conflict narrative framing was removed from primary registry interpretation. Social humiliation intent evaluation was marked as probable. No one used the word revenge. The system did not operate in that language. The clerk sealed the recording archive envelope. The husband spoke only once. "Is this finished?" The investigator replied without emotion. "Classification review is complete for now." The certificate of behavioral assessment was stored inside the institutional archive. My sister's speech was not erased, but it was no longer considered neutral social expression. It was recorded as a communication event requiring ethical evaluation. I stood up after several seconds, not because I was asked to leave, but because silence had already delivered the answer I needed. Outside the review chamber window, the evening light reflected across the administrative building glass surface. I thought about how preparation does not sound like confrontation, documentation does not speak like accusation, and silence, when protected by evidence, does not need explanation. The husband walked beside me when we left the building corridor. Neither of us spoke until we reached the parking level. He said only one sentence. "You planned this from the beginning, didn't you?" I did not answer immediately, because truth is sometimes better expressed through continuation rather than declaration. I kept the recording because I noticed the pattern, not revenge, observation. He nodded once. The car door closed quietly. Inside the passenger seat, I placed the archive confirmation receipt inside my personal folder. The recording was safe. The system had already heard it, and sometimes justice does not arrive with noise. It arrives when silence stops being ignored.